One. Hey, welcome everyone to Bridges
Recording in
Live
progress.
presents You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. We are every Wednesday. I might not be. Judge Claudia Barber may not be. Marilyn, she is, but she might not be. But we are here as a collective every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You Be the Judge. We love this show. It's about information, action, and understanding. And more importantly, it's about what we understand and how we gather our information and then what we can go from there. We just have some beautiful co-hosts and Judge Claudia Barbara and Marylin Pierre. I do have to apologize for all the listeners and people who watch the show. I've been gone for 2 weeks, and it just seems like the world has been like a pancake. It's just turned over just a little bit, and now it's got some little burnt around the edges. Um, Before we get to the award-winning Judge Claudia Barber, and she can give us a synopsis, I'm just so proud of this beautiful woman. I met her sister. I can go on and on. It's a whole other show about that. But Marylin Pierre, how you been? How's the campaign? Most of you people know that Marylin Pierre is running for Circuit Court Judge in Montgomery County, the most convoluted county, I'm starting to think, in Maryland. It is the nastiest, the little dog that bites. It's just it's a sick county, but we have hope, we have prayers, but we have work to do. So Marilyn, how's it going? How's the campaign?
It is going really well. Thank you for asking. And yes, we do have lots of work to do. I know next Tuesday, March 8th at 5 p.m., I am going to be a guest on Progressive Legacy. So please join me so we could have a discussion about my campaign. And then next Tuesday as well, after I do the 5 p.m. Progressive Legacy interview, I at 7:30, I am going to be attending the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee meeting because the other candidates are trying to get the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee to endorse them, even though they are for Hogan appointees. So,
And
so
also,
that,
and also on March 8th, there's a school board meeting in Montgomery County, and they're trying to get the police officers back into the school, and they're trying to not let anyone know what they're trying to do. They want police officers on the police accountability board meeting on the board so they can override any judgment that ever happens. It's just Montgomery County is just nasty, and they are sneaky, and it's still the gatekeepers are holding the gate and the keys.
yes, that is so true. That is so true. That's why we're so happy that we have a co-host who is an award-winning person who could tell us what to do to let them, well, to pick that lock, to push that door open, to do what we need to do to get in there.
So,
Well, you know, the Police Accountability Board is still an issue in Anne Arundel County too. And there were protesters actually at our award event last week to address that, you know, to protest that very issue.
Oh, really?
yeah,
Tell
oh
us
yeah,
more.
it's so. First, let's go with great news. Judge Claudia Barber, you won an award recently, last week, last Wednesday. I know, I was there, and I was so happy. Tell us about the award, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, okay. This was actually a presentation by the county executive and the Caucus of African American Leaders. And the name of the awards program, few of the many, the men that received awards received Elijah Cummings Awards, and the women that received awards received the Sojourner Truth Awards. And I was thrilled at the opportunity and the nomination and the actual award, receiving the award with many of the county council members there. And the applause was overwhelming. And it was very uplifting, if you will, to be honored in such a magnanimous way by the county and county council and the caucus, because, the work that we do, oftentimes, there's a sacrifice piece to it. Whenever you're trying to get into good trouble, just as the late Congress John Lewis did, there are sacrifices that are made. And sometimes, the rights are not always, the wrongs rather are not always righted. I was thrilled that the opportunity to be nominated and to actually receive the award. And I'm also grateful to be a part of this this program because there have been so many things and events going on, and I know you want to take it over, and I want you to take it over because there's been the nomination of the Honorable Judge Kendaji Brown Jackson for U.S. Associate Judge on the U.S. Supreme Court. And the State of the Union address, I listened to it mostly in its entirety. And I also have been watching closely the invasion of Ukraine. And I will say this before I give it back to you, and that is oftentimes the actions of Vladimir Putin often remind me of how untruthful things have happened in this United States of America when it comes to compliance with the 14th Amendment for all people. You don't need all these laws to restate this, that, and the other if you got the 14th Amendment that guarantees equal protection of the laws. And it's upsetting that you have to have a police accountability board and all of that. Well, what happened to the 14th Amendment?
Well, Judge Claudia Barber, I've been saying this for several weeks now. I believe that they're attacking the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. They've been attacking the 13th for a while. So, and once the 13th is gone, the 14th falls. The 14th has no standing ground after the 13th. And they've been attacking and eroding it state by state, little by little. And once it gets done, it's done. It will not come back.
Yes, and it's awful that our Constitution cannot stand on its own 2 feet. And the fact that you need a 13th Amendment, you need a 14th Amendment to guarantee equal protection under the laws and to abolish slavery and the slavery strongholds. There's been so many events that have been happening, including the invasion of Ukraine, and how that has really captured the entire world. I don't believe that Vladimir Putin is going to come out of this at all on the winning side at all. I just don't see it. I really don't.
You want to hear my little synopsis on this Russian Ukraine? I try to put politics simple for people. When Russia and the Ukraine, when they broke up like a boyfriend and girlfriend, the male is Russia, the girl is Ukraine. He didn't want.
Why do you have to be so binary? Why does one have to be male and one have to be female?
Well, because when his partner went to date someone else, Putin was not having it. He was like an abusive mate. He doesn't want anyone else to date you. He doesn't want anyone else to have you. So he was going to interject himself, no matter what in Ukraine's life, and get them back. Whether they date him or not, you just can't go with anyone else. That's a simple way of putting what's going on with Russia and Ukraine.
Okay, I get that. But what's very interesting is the political narrative or the false narratives that Putin has been pushing out all along. No, our troops aren't there to invade anything. No, we're not there to invade anything, as the troops just roll right on in. And no, there's no war going on. As you watch on TV, you blew half of a building down. There's no invasion. All this is just lies. And I'm like, okay. So the world sees Putin as just a big fat liar.
But Judge Claudia Barber, The question I have is, who was he lying to? Because if coming from a military background, the military has eyes on via satellite, right? There is nothing he was doing that he could say that he wasn't, because everyone's watching, right? So who was he lying to?
I think he still was lying to his country, but he also
Gotcha.
was lying to the world, that there was no invasion of Ukraine, and we're seeing otherwise. And I'm sitting up here thinking the same way. Well, America has treated us the same way,
Right.
in a lot of ways.
Right.
You sat there and told us we have equal protection under the laws. Now we're sitting up here arguing over a police accountability board.
Right. Right.
You're just a Vladimir Putin too.
So it's the same playbook being played over and over, and yet if we don't encourage, is the best way I can put it, with our citizens to start being vigilant on what they're saying and to understand why they're saying it, then it just gets passed by and passed over.
Well,
I would
Marylin,
like to weigh in a little bit,
Absolutely.
because I think that Russia feels that the United States has violated a gentleman's agreement that they had in getting, trying to get as close to Ukraine, which is very close to Russia. I think that is what the deal really is, because Russia came out and said, okay, if you go into Ukraine, we're going to go into Nicaragua and we're going to be in your backyard. I think it's a geopolitical squabble that's going on as well, as what you both said.
Yes.
I agree with you, and yet, so let me ask, before because we have a special guest coming on, Delegate Dawn Lieberman. She is coming on. She'll be here with us at 6:15. She is running for the state controller, but she'll tell you all about her. But before we get there, how has the invasion or the modern warfare that you have been witnessing, whether you've been ex-military, you have family in the military, this is something we're actually watching it roll out on TV. I was not alive during Vietnam, but I think this is the first. Well, I was in Desert Storm, so I didn't see it on TV. So, how do you feel about how this has all come out? How do people feel about that?
Bad. I have seen a military machine squash a car in my face on the television screen. It's as though you have no regard for human life. None. I mean, that is just shocking. And the pictures that I see about that they are literally attacking civilians. Bombing buildings where people live, residential territory.
Now, when Obama was in office, he had the most drone strikes in all of presidential history, and that was not shown on TV. And I don't think many people even know about that, or at least they don't talk about it. How do you feel about if we had watched that on TV?
Well, that would have been, there were even, there have been times I am aware that the United States have touched on civilian terror. And it was heartbreaking because at one point I distinctly remember during that Afghanistan, might as well call it a war, civilians were killed by the US.
Yes, they were.
And it was heartbreaking because, to watch that, and people the leader had to explain, and he couldn't explain, undescribable, could not explain how you're still, allies with the United States and they've lost their mom, their dad, their children, etc. And that's just so crushing, but war is like that. It remains to be seen. We don't even know how this is going to end. Then all of a sudden, they're going to escalate this and say that he has his eyes on nuclear weapons.
Yeah, well, again, sorry to cut you off, Judge Claudia, if I did, but we both, that was one of the things that Russia and America had was nuclear weapons, and they were used previously as deterrents, so that no one wanted to annihilate the other one. And now we're in this quest for power where Ukraine wants to join NATO and wants to be in the West. Well, just like I said previously, Putin does not want a basis, because that is what happens when America and when Russia goes around the world. They put bases there. So this is what the deal really is. And as I see the interpretation of what's going on there. And then I wonder, where did COVID all of a sudden go? Because we're every news outlet is really concentrating on this war. So it's a propaganda play for something, for American sentiment, America win if they go in. But the nuclear weapons was what was keeping all of this at bay for years. So I'm not sure what's
you know what I like, Teresa? I like that you're thinking. And this has nothing to be about agreeing or disagreeing. I like that you're thinking, and I think, and if I could just send a sentiment to all of you, all the listeners, I just want you to keep thinking and looking and reading. That's all. Because if you could do that, then you will not be the sheep that gets bitten by the wolf. I do see our special guest, Delegate Brooke Lieberman, did join us. We're going to have her introduce herself. Thank you, Brooke, for coming on. I know you've been super busy because this is the time of year you've been super busy. But let's get right into it. Thank you so much for visiting with us here at You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You Be the Judge is hosted by myself, Dr. Paul Dyer, Marylin, Pierre, running for Circuit Court Judge, and Judge Claudia Barber. And the rest are just family that comes in. We have a great conversation about information, understanding, and action. Welcome, Delegate Brooke Lieberman.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see all of you. Marylin, great to see you. Dr. Claudia, great to see you. Dr. Dyer, wonderful to see you all. I'm Brooke Lieberman, and you're right, it is a little busy because I'm actually a state delegate, and we just finished hearings about 10 minutes ago. So I took a quick break, grabbed some water, and hopped on. And so I serve in the Maryland House of Delegates. I represent part of Baltimore City, District 46. And I'm also an attorney. I'm a civil rights and disability rights attorney. I work at a firm called Brown, Goldstein, and Levy. And I'm excited to be running to be Maryland's next state comptroller. Really looking forward to tonight, and thanks for having me on, and happy to chat and share some perspectives and share what on earth a comptroller is, or whatever works for you. Thanks.
Well, I got to tell you, before we have any questions and you want to tell us what comptroller is, when we've been talking about having you on for several weeks, right? And most of the people who are visiting our show, there's a back into this between Marylin and Claudia, like, who's coming on the show. Now, I don't know how many FBI agents, I don't know who you know in the government. I've been followed for the last month and a half. Your dad I did not know your dad was in politics for a long time. Maybe because I'm a new Marylander, that I was being followed for the last 2 weeks. And so so kudos to you about who you know and how important you are. So thank you.
I don't know about that. How about I'm just working really hard. Yes, but yeah, I definitely come from a family that really believes in the power of public service to make a difference in people's lives. And so my father was worked for Steny Hoyer, and at one point was chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, and sort of passed on his belief in public service to us. So my brother Kyle worked in the Obama administration. My two younger brothers, my brother Kyle worked in the Obama administration. My other brother Trent works for Casa de Maryland. So we all try to be very involved and make a positive difference in our own way.
Now that makes sense why I was being followed. I get it, right? So, Brooke, let us know, one, why you going from being a delegate, doing the work you are doing, and then going into the comptroller, I'm going to always believe that people don't know what a comptroller does or have. So first explain that transition, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks for that great question. So, I have loved representing Baltimore in the House of Delegates. I've served on the Appropriations Committee, helping oversee our state's, $50 billion plus budget. I chair the Joint Committee on Pensions, $70 billion of investments for almost 415,000 state retirees. And I love being an attorney. I really love digging in deep in my communities, working with our schools, I've helped start a community development corporation and more. And so I've really come to understand just how uniquely situated the comptroller is to make a difference on income-based issues and to really help change the trajectory of the state for the good, right? To make sure we're tackling some of the economic challenges that we see working families dealing with every day, especially through the pandemic. So there is an open seat for the first time since 1998 for comptroller, right? It's been a long time. So I'm really excited to bring a new and bold vision for how that office can work and serve Marylanders and really be a people's advocate. I learned from my legal training, like how to be an advocate for people, how to lift their voices up. And so I'm excited to bring that perspective and work ethic and the knowledge I've learned to the comptroller's office. But what is a comptroller? Great question. We even made a cartoon that's on my website called "What does a comptroller do?" That we share with people because it's even a tough word to say, right? So 3 things to keep in mind about the comptroller's office. First and foremost, the comptroller is one of only 3 independently elected statewide officials we have in Maryland. So we've got the governor, the attorney general, and the comptroller. And the comptroller, that statewide voice, it's just so important that we have somebody who understands like how that role can uplift communities, can help us tackle the racial wealth divide, can help prepare us for climate change, right? Can really be using the money that's coming from the federal government more to really uplift our communities, families, and our small businesses who have been really hurting through the pandemic. So statewide voice, so important. Number 2, the comptroller sits on a number of very important state boards, including 2, the State Retirement and Pension Board and the Board of Public Works. So the State Retirement and Pension Board, like I mentioned, I chair the Joint Committee on Pensions. I have a lot of understanding of how it works, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're doing well, but there's more that we can be doing to make sure that our investments for our retirees are sound and that we're investing in line with our values and being good fiduciaries. And the Board of Public Works, so this is the most important administrative body in the state of Maryland. It's 3 people, the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller.
Right.
And it really holds the power of the purse in Maryland, right? It is responsible for approving or denying like every major contract, right? Whether it's building a new school or buying new buses or, a new online system to run Medicaid, or even something like approving payments to wrongfully convicted individuals, right? That all goes through the Board of Public Works. I am so excited to be able to be the people's advocate on the Board of Public Works. I mean, there's just so much that we need to be doing, digging into the issues, understanding how the contracts we do can actually uplift Maryland businesses, right? Keeping our money local so that we're building generational wealth here in the state. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And then finally, the third role of the comptroller. I'm sorry to remind all of you and your listeners that I'm running to be the next tax collector. But even there's so much that we can do to modernize the system, to make it easier for people to pay their taxes and get their refunds, and to really make sure that that the wealthiest among us, those with the most complex tax filings, that they're paying their fair share, right? That they are not getting a free ride just because they have complex tax returns that they're filing. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, like working Marylanders, that they are getting the tax credits that are owed to them, like the earned income tax credit that is, can be thousands of dollars for a Maryland family. So I'm excited to make sure that Comptroller is both enforcing our tax law, but also reaching out, being present and proactive, and reducing barriers to people to get the money they need. So that, in a nutshell, is the Comptroller's office. If you need one sentence, I would say the Comptroller of Maryland is the first person in our government that sees the numbers that tell the story of how Maryland families and businesses and communities are doing.
I thank you for, that's the easiest version of what a comptroller is. The second, I think there's a back door. I think basically if people heard it right, you have the purse, right? Mama's got the checkbook, right? So if Mama has a checkbook, she could buy it or she could sell it. We know that Maryland is one of the richest states in the United States. We also know that there's a large issue with a lot of things. For the last many years of the past comptroller, whether you want to say it or not, how do you believe that job was done, and how come it wasn't done properly? So it's almost like a trick question there, because I personally don't think it was done well enough. And I'm a new Marylander.
You know, I'm not gonna,
Right.
you know, say anything about sort of the current comptroller. I think everybody brings their own spin to the job.
Okay.
And for me, you know, I really do think we can build on what he's done and reimagine how, you know, for instance, there's really good bones in the office, right? There's great employees, and we do need new staff too, because some staff has left in all our agencies. But I'll give you one example. There are 12 field offices that the comptroller's office has all over the state of Maryland. I like to say that they're sort of like the MVA, but no lines. But I really want to sort of reimagine how those local field offices engage in their communities, right? Like going on podcasts, reaching out to fraternities and sororities, faith-based groups, senior centers, and making sure that around the community, people know that they're the local comptroller's office. They can help you with your tax returns. They can help you with how to start a small business. They can help you connect you to financial literacy classes. I want those 12 offices to be real economic hubs and connectors for the community groups in their area. So those offices exist, which is great. I just want to bring my own spin, which is like really doing the outreach and being proactive. And I'm excited about that.
Well, there's a lot of discussion. Well, first of all, let me share that during the revelation of the wrongful convictions of several Marylanders who spent decades in prison for crimes they did not commit. And, you know, entities like the Innocence Project persevered and got their convictions overturned. So after that, the Board of Public Works had the obligation to pay them, compensate them for their injury. That are substantial. And I was a bit concerned that the governor was very slow in getting this accomplished for people who have been for prison. So my concern is that the comptroller's role should be much more proactive in voicing, you know, the paycheck that is due them, and making sure that they get paid.
No, I mean, you'll find no disagreement from me on that. They were my firm's clients. So you know, Mr. Jerome Johnson, Clarence Shipley, and others. So I absolutely agree. And it's in fact, because it took so long, that was why the state legislature passed legislation to create a process so that it won't take so long in the future. Because you're right, it took too long. I mean, it was crazy. And it was really frustrating for our clients and for those people, you know, those men who wanted to get on with their lives and have the resources to do that in a meaning, you know, in a dignified way and with some recourse. I mean, you can never get the time back that you've lost, but at the very least, you should be able to not have to worry about money and where your next, you know, putting a roof over your head when you get out. I was part of a team that represented a man who was wrongfully convicted and served over 20 years for a crime he didn't commit against the Baltimore Police Department. And we secured one of the largest settlements in Baltimore Police Department history for him. So I completely agree. And I'm glad that the legislature, that we've been able to act to create a process so that it can go more smoothly.
Well, yes, and I think that the other concern is that you're right, that there's just no big dollar amount you could really put on somebody who's lost a whole lot of opportunity. The opportunity to go to medical school, law school, engineering school, PhD programs, etc. All of that was wiped out from under them. In a prison for a crime they did not commit, and they had no opportunity to share with their loved ones. If someone died, if there were funerals to go to, etc. We don't even know if they made those funerals to their closest relatives. And just getting back on track. But you know, that kind of segues me into another topic, which is how to tackle the racial wealth divide.
Hold on, Claudia. Before we let Brooke, I know our senior Will wants to, he's the oldest one of the bunch. That's why you call senior Will. He's got a question. Will, go ahead. You're on mute, Will. We'll get this zoomed down. Did you get it? Well, it's coming. I know it. Feel it. It's a button coming. Still not there. Hold on. Let's see if I can help out here from here. Where is Will? I am going to... There, I think I just asked you to unmute, and I think you just got to hit that button. Nope. Well, until Will gets his thing, go ahead, Brooke. Answer Judge Claudia. Comfort, you have a question?
I really do.
Go ahead.
How you all doing?
Good. Thank you, Comfort.
All right. My question is to the anyone on the panel. How can you help the underserved minority to advance on their retirement, savings, housing, and legacies? We know the minority has been, greatly affected by this COVID-19. I believe like over 1 million lives lost in the United States so far, and by mostly minority. And then, I really appreciate what you're doing, collecting taxes for, two things are inevitable in life: debt and taxes. We all indebted to it. But how do you help the underserved minorities, most especially brown skin and black skin people, to advance on all these issues?
I think
especially of housing.
I think that falls right into what Judge Claudia Barber was just about ready to ask. Go ahead, Brooke.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this
is
a
okay,
really...
sorry. I joined late because
it's perfect. That's perfect.
There was a death in the family. My pastor at the Macedonia Baptist Church, Reverend Dr. King, passed away. So we're having some meetings. So I didn't know you already asked the question.
No.
No, totally fine. No, but it's the question, right? It's incredibly important
Yes.
because, we certainly saw through the pandemic, I mean, we were all in the same storm, right? But we were not all in the same boat. And we saw how unevenly it affected Marylanders, including disproportionately, affecting people of color and the businesses of people of color, right? So this is a huge deal. And it really is one of the biggest economic challenges that Maryland has to figure out. So I will say, I think there's a range of things that we need to do in the Comptroller's office. So and they sort of fall into different buckets. I'd say first and foremost, we need to have somebody in the office who's totally focused on this issue, right? An equity officer who can ensure that the policies and practices that we have really take the wealth gap into account and are intentionally focusing on reducing that gap. And, to look at everything from procurement to tax collection, to tax guidance, to tax preparation services, and ensuring that there's, equitable access and distribution of resources to every Marylander, right? So that's, I think, one thing is that just centrally, it has to be something that we intentionally focus on. Then I think there's sort of three broad categories, right? Promoting home ownership, because, in America, your home is usually your greatest asset. And then talking about how we promote assets and savings. And then finally, of course, business ownership, right? So I think in each of these spaces, the Comptroller's office can work with local governments, nonprofits, legislators, the governor, other agencies to really, target different ways to make sure we're working forward and closing this gap intentionally. So one of those pieces would be small business lending, right? Over the last decade, we have seen banks operating significantly increase their deposits while cutting back on small business loans. And we know that, it is Black-owned businesses are turned down for loans at least and probably more than twice the rate of white-owned businesses. So the Comptroller needs to be working with our banks in partnership with the treasurer to ensure that they are loaning, right? That they are making loans and that we have programs in place to encourage those loans. So I passed a bill last year to create the type of program that would help with a state-backed loan program to encourage banks to lend. But we need the Comptroller and treasurer to bring the hammer down. Like, why should the state of Maryland do business with banks if those banks aren't loaning to Marylanders, right? To people of color. So I think that's, one important thing. On assets and savings, I will say there are a number of different things I think we should be doing. But one quick thing is just that sole proprietors who are Schedule C tax filers, they can have really complicated tax situations and lack access to high quality tax assistance because it can be complicated and expensive. And so I want to make sure that we have a taxpayer advocate in the Comptroller's office who will work with sole proprietors in the field offices around the state to make sure that those entrepreneurs who are, often entrepreneurs of color are not being unfairly taxed and are applying for the credits that they should be receiving, right? And then finally, look, business ownership is huge, right? And there are a number of different things that I think we can be doing to help build Black-owned businesses and Black women-owned businesses in particular. But one thing I will say is that we need to use the power of the purse. Like, we need to put our money where our mouth is, right? Procurement can be an incredibly valuable tool for really leveling the playing field for Black and brown-owned businesses. And all of this money that's going to come from the federal government because of the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, we need to make sure that we're not waiving MBE requirements. We need to make sure that we are being more transparent about and intentional about reaching out to businesses owned by people of color, so that so agency, like if you're a DNR and you have a sort of small dollar procurement list where you can just have an approved vendors, right, how do you get on that list? Like, nobody knows, right? So we need to be more transparent about that. And we need to do things like prompt payment, right? Delegate Daryl Barnes has a good bill on requiring prompt payment from the state, so that businesses don't have to wait to be paid. And when it is going to take a while to get paid because of how a contract is structured, setting up a sort of revolving loan fund so that you can keep paying your employees after you've been guaranteed the contract, and then pay that money back to the bank or to the state through this revolving loan fund. So there are definitely ways that we can help close this gap, but we have to be really focused on it and keep it top of mind in nearly everything we do.
I like that what you said.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Judge.
You said, and the one important thing that you focused on was procurement and the banks. We need to root out redlining because a lot of times redlining is hidden in algorithms and how people's credit scores are calculated. I've seen some very, very strange things happening on credit reports. And personally myself, I paid off about 5 accounts, and because I used a Credit Karma app, I showed that I could see how my credit score dropped, not rise, dropped 30 points. And I'm sitting up here going, what is this? What is going on? There is some type of algorithm situation that is connected to people's credit scores that needs to be researched, and there needs to be a deep dive so that we can root out all of these, events that are happening that are filled with blinders, or disguised ways of denying loan applications to minorities. I remember Apostle Palmer mentioned going to his local M&T bank near his former church and was denied an opportunity for a loan. And in that situation, when those loans are denied, they need to answer to a source like the Comptroller's office and evaluate what they're doing, why, an Asian person got a loan or some other foreign entity got a loan, and then the person in the same little neighborhood or that same Odenton community, Anne Arundel County community did not get that loan. And if there is some disparity there, that needs to be rooted out, especially if it's for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree that it's a huge issue. I do think that state programs can help. And I do think that having the Comptroller and the Treasurer bring a very watchful eye to this situation can help as well. And so I totally agree with everything. Yeah, no, totally agree.
Will, I see you are navigated your mute button. Hold on, Bernadette.
Okay.
Will had a question earlier. Go ahead, Will.
Did your father, by any chance, run against Connie Marylin in congressional aid?
He did. He ran for Congress in 2000. He lost, but he did run for Congress in 2000, quite a while ago. And it's funny, he ran against Connie Marylin and he lost. And just last fall, I had the opportunity to moderate a discussion with Connie Marylin and Barber Mikulski, which was a lot of fun. So good memory, sir.
Yeah, but Bernadette, go ahead, please.
Oh, first, thank you so much for running, for being willing to serve, and for being here. I have 2 questions. One is about whether it's in your purview to address the streamlining of the way we pay taxes. Simplifying paying taxes. So that's one issue. And then the second issue is how public schools are funded. So what, the role of property taxes, how the policy issues with which the Comptroller would deal regarding property taxes and the use of taxes to fund Maryland's public schools?
Great question. So do you know about the blueprint for Maryland's future?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'm going to start there. Schools and the blueprint. So 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed sort of once in a generation school funding and education overhaul legislation called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And this bill is focused on equitably funding our schools, giving our educators raises, expanding pre-K, providing more community schools, creating more community schools, which are basically like, social workers who are doing great work in schools, and expanding career tech ed and career options. So the Blueprint for Maryland's Future is a huge bill that took, the better part of 6 years to put together. There was a huge commission called the Kirwan Commission that went all over the state talking to people and meeting with schools and meeting with parents and educators and students. And then they put together the legislation. We passed the legislation, the governor vetoed the legislation, and then last year we overrode the governor's veto in 2021, so now it is in place. So that legislation will bring additional funding to school districts that have been frankly underfunded for like the last decade, including Baltimore City Public Schools and Prince George's County Public Schools. There was another bill that we passed along with that called the Built to Learn Act. And the Built to Learn Act provides additional capital funding for school districts. So, I'm a graduate of Montgomery County Public Schools. They are growing quickly and they need more money for school construction. Where, in Baltimore, our student population is pretty steady, like it's just sort of staying about the same. But we have really old buildings, so we need money for school construction. So we passed a legislation to provide every county money for school construction. So those are two huge education bills that we passed recently. And as the next comptroller, I will be very focused on ensuring that, because I worked so hard on the blueprint for so many years, I'm very invested in ensuring that it is rolled out faithfully. There's accountability and transparency, and that money is reaching the kids who need it. So that was, I hope that helps answer your question on education. The first question you asked was about whether it's in the comptroller's ambit to make it easier to pay taxes, and 100%. So the comptroller doesn't get to decide how high or low your taxes are, but the comptroller is there to help make it easier to pay taxes. And that is something that I am very focused on and want to make a big priority in my, if I am elected in my first year, to reduce barriers to paying taxes, to make it easier to pay online. Right now you can file your I-file in one place, your B-file in another if you own a business. It's all sort of, they're all separate. You might not get your refund for a while. So I really want to bring that up and modernize the best we can, so you can log in, see last year's taxes, see what you got to do this year, and it's all in one place for you. So absolutely, it's a great question, and I look forward to working with you and others to get ideas on how to make sure we can roll that out successfully.
You have a follow-up question?
Yes, and I'll just be really quick, just so that you understand where I'm coming from.
Yep.
With regard to paying taxes in the most easy way and the least burdensome way for taxpayers, that's been a pet peeve of mine for so many years. I feel as though policy is made for tax preparers, that the tax codes are made very burdensome, and that there is a lobby out there of tax preparers who are making money off of consumers, off of taxpayers. And we have many models around the world of countries that literally just send a bill to taxpayers. If you agree with the bill, you pay online. If you disagree with the bill, you file a short return, and you can do it online. And I think that the government gets so much information from us that we should be following those types of models. I would hope at the federal level, but also in Maryland. And just quickly on the property taxes part, the reason why I bring that up, I have a home in the wealthiest part of Maryland with kids who didn't go to the public schools. They didn't go to private schools, but I really have a stake in our state educating our children equitably throughout this state. And I think it is a fundamental civil rights issue that schools are funded through property taxes. And I think that we should be, for us to, in my view, be the best that we can be, we need to find various ways to equitably fund schools outside of this paradigm of just relying on property taxes. So that's just.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with you, but I will say it's not just your property taxes funding your schools, right? There's also, like, I don't know where you live. I'm just saying, speaking broadly.
I'm in Montgomery County.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, in Baltimore City, we pay the highest property taxes in the state, but we still don't, you know, have enough to fund the needs of our schools. I mean, right? So that's why we passed the blueprint.
Yes.
So the funding formula accounts for that. So we get additional money from the state to help fund our schools. It's not just on us, right? So yeah, and I definitely check out the blueprint and check out an organization called Strong Schools Maryland.
Okay.
They have really been a leader in helping us pass the blueprint for Maryland's future, and now are leading on implementation. And it's all about equity, right? It's about making sure that these schools are equitably funded. So thank you for that, and thank you for your passion on it. I appreciate that.
I know we're going to be respectful of your time, because I'm sure you got to go to a meeting right after this. And if there's anything you want to let us know, Brooke, thank you for coming on. Thank you for visiting here with You Be the Judge. There's more to come. You're always welcome back on. I just know you're busy, but if there's anything you want you let us to know. Furthermore, going continuous. And before you leave, the Caucus of African American Leaders of Maryland, we're having a Black convention in June 11th. We're inviting all the leaders of political leaders of Maryland. You'll get a letter, but since you're on the show, it looks like it's going to be held at Morgan. But we come on. It's going to be a political. It's going to be just only a Black agenda meeting. But all political candidates and people who are running are going to be invited. So I'm inviting you personally to visit with us in June 11th. So thank you. So anything you want to let us know before you have to take off, before one of your aides snatches you away with one of those cranes. So
before my phone starts blowing up. No, I just really appreciate you giving me a moment to come by and introduce myself. This is a really, we are facing a really critical juncture in the state of Maryland, I think, right? Like Bernadette said, we have some of the most prosperous communities in the nation in this state, but we also have, far too many who have been left behind and who have seen disinvestment and are still suffering from racial discrimination and a history of redlining and more. And this is our time. Right, this is our moment to make sure that we sort of heed the clarion call of the racial reckoning that we're going through, of learn the lessons from the pandemic, and use this enormous amount of money that's coming from the federal government to do better, right? And if we can't do better now, we will never do better in the future. And so you all are so involved, and I am so grateful that you are, because we need people to be involved and to let their friends, their neighbors, their communities know how high the stakes are for this election, right? And that we have to elect people who have bold visions, who have the ability to get things done, and are going to be there with the right values, working overtime all the time. I've loved running a 24 county campaign. I've loved being everywhere I can be. And I want to keep that up and keep up the conversation and be your advocate.
You sound more like a governor than a comptroller. I'm just saying, I'm not pushing I'm not pushing the envelope. I'm just saying you sound.
I manage the money. Thank you all so much. I put my
Follow the money.
in the chat, and I'd love be thrilled. I just put a little sign up form there. I'd be thrilled if you consider signing up so we can keep in touch. My website is just brookelearman.com, and I hope that you'll visit and keep in touch. So thank you so much for having me.
We have an email.
Yeah, it's
My
in
email
the
is-
chat.
I will put that as well. My email is
okay.
brooke@brookelearman.com. I will put
Okay.
that there as
And,
well.
and those of you who have questions, I apologize. Brooke doesn't have all that much time. Admit them. I know I see your hand up. I did not see your hand. It's just that she does have a hard cut at 7. And we know you personally, Mitham, and that's not happening when you get on at 10 to 7. So, thank you, Brooke, for
Thank
joining
you.
us. You can
Thank
stay
you,
if you
everybody.
want, but
Have
I
a
know you
great
have a
night.
hard break.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you,
Have a great
Brooke.
night.
So
Thank
after
you for all your work. Bye-bye.
what you heard Brooke just talk about and what a comptroller is, let's talk amongst ourselves and tell, what do you guys think?
I liked what she said. I wanted to share more concern about what it is we do to close the racial wealth divide. Because people can be all talk, but I want to hear good policy statements or ideas or initiatives to get the job done. Because everybody's tired of the same old, same old. We're not impressed anymore with the Democratic Party. We're not impressed with the Republican Party. We're just not impressed.
But I think Bernadette mentioned something, and she had, it was sort of like it was hidden under what you said, Bernadette. And I think there's a lot of ownership of what we don't know. And I think people need to be able to access someone who does know. And then we can go from there, because there's a lot of mistakes that stumbling and fumbling. There should be anyone on this show who listens to this show, there's no stumbling and fumbling. Reach out and ask someone, how can I? That's all you got to do. And what do I need to do? And then we go from there. I don't think we ask each other enough questions.
Well, at the last state equity and media meeting, and I thought Brooke was there, because we've had a lot of guests and they roll in and out of our meetings. But I specifically was concerned about, equity in procurement contracts, which is related to closing the racial, wealth divide.
Who gets those contracts?
And a specific example, even though it happened, let's say, decades ago, because I've been practicing, or I've been a lawyer for more than 30 years. But I would get a phone call from a general contractor or a major contractor to be a subcontractor on a contract that they need a minority voice or a minority contractor to make their full presentation. After I give the consent to be the contractor, their minority contractor on their team and on their bid proposal, once I say yes, they sign me up and hey, they got this minority here, and then all of a sudden, I never hear from them again. Not one word. So, there is no enforcement mechanism when it comes to procurement contracts, such that, you don't have to prove that you have fairly distributed under the contract to your minority subcontractor at all. And to the extent that you don't have to prove it through audits, through withholding of funds, etc., a discontinuation of the contract, those types of remedies, conceivably, large contractors could do that through infinity. And that is pretend they brought a minority contractor, then ditch them, go with somebody else, never hear from them again, as long as it's part of the original bid proposal. And all it does is just add to the racial wealth divide when it comes to procurement activity. And, yes, there is minority business enterprise certification in Maryland. It's been here for decades. But is it for real? Or is it just a registering point? And it's just somewhere where you can pick up a minority contractor and drop them after you're awarded the contract.
Right.
So these are the types of issues where if the comptroller has an office where there's an active equity officer that's going around conducting audits in procurement, then addressing real consequences if they see that you signed up for one company and you changed the guards like that, implementing policies that are effective policies as opposed to not effective policies.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation. The live show is going to stop streaming. Remember, you can catch all this on iHeart Radio, all your podcast channels. It's I think the show's 159. But then you can actually catch it on YouTube and Facebook and all those things. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the live show. We'll be here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Remember, to be a part of the community means you be a part of the change. Thank you so much. And thank everyone for joining. You be the judge.